You're watching the Chaos Protocol on Transplanar RPG, an all-transgender, people of color-led dark fantasy TTRPG show set in an original non-colonial, anti-Orientalist multiverse. If you like what you see, please consider pledging to our Patreon to support the show and get access to a patron-only after-show, early podcast episodes, GM notes, character sheets, and even the chance for your tabletop OC to cameo in our series. Thank you so much for watching, and enjoy. The Chaos Protocol is a dark fantasy series that may contain content that is triggering for some viewers. Content warnings for this episode include heights, vast bodies of water, smoking, alcohol, food, cooking, eating, romance, kissing, memory loss, complex relationships, intense familial dynamics, blood, graveyards, death of loved ones, grief, and references to sex. Arc 3, Episode 21. Beg for the Spirits. From Praying Beside the Teeth That Killed Me by Connie Chang. A day passes. And then another. And then another. Time spins ever onward, the silver threads of its web unspooling across the twisting alleyways of Inferno. This web ensnares all, the mortals pouring through those concrete veins we call streets, the werewolves roving amidst wild packs, the vampires scheming in shadowy houses. Everyone in Inferno is bound by these invisible threads, the threads we call loyalty, the threads we call responsibility, the threads we call time. We follow one such thread now, through the rusting metal streets of the warehouse district to the soaring heights of downtown Inferno. This thread lances through a cloud of steam rising from a rain gutter, then spins around the wings of a gliding bird. Dante, the carrion crow. Dante lands on a street lamp, and this thread spins down, down, down until it reaches the man passing beneath that flickering light. Xainan Esch. Xainan, as days turn to weeks in Inferno, you spend your time trawling its neon streets, learning its shaded alleys and grand plazas as a polyglot would a new tongue. Sometimes Dante accompanies you, hopping from roof to roof. Other times, the moon is your sole companion, silver and lonely in her endless, starry grave. You develop an intimate understanding of Inferno's sprawl, its many neighborhoods and boroughs, the boundaries both real and imagined that permeate it. Your dreams themselves become hazy, streaked with smoke from hand-rolled cigars and the bittersweet smell of freshly churned blood. Some nights, you sit on the grassy slopes of Lover's Lane and watch the Red River rise, carving its crimson path through the silhouette of the city. Other nights, you ambulate through the Inferno Common, enjoying the damp smell of mid-autumn leaves under the shade of that ancient, fated archway. Like the rest of your strike team, you are continuing your mission in this undying city. The four of you are doing as the patron saint of mortals has suggested. You are learning Inferno and all its complicated weavings. You are drawing your own conclusions about the spider and the shrike. And the more time you spend in Inferno, the more densely that invisible web wraps around you. You are not its center, Xainan Esch, but by choosing to stay here, you have become one of the many vampires caught in its unseen grasp, tangled in those complicated relations we call friendships, paramours, duties, suspicions. We follow another thread now, vibrating down its path with a ghostly resonance. We rush past motorcycles and city buses over the ancient Inferno Bridge, skimming the crimson waves of the Red River until we find Seir. Seir, as days turn to weeks, you hunt, you train, you test the limits of this familiar but New, graven body, relearning what it means to protect and pursue when hunter and quarry are equally dangerous. You are tested by the blade now accompanying you in Inferno. Patience. But you are not tested alone. Yinghe is your loving shadow, always by your side as you hunt for prey, sharing intimate mouthfuls of stolen blood. You accompany Xainan to the Lazy Bear Pub and Grill more than once, playing darts with Anugata and Kelliga, or just Kelliga if Anu and Xainan are busy doing whatever it is they tend to do in the walk-in freezer. Xainan always stumbles out, hair messy, hat off, plastered in bites, or just plain plastered. Anu always comes out with nary a scratch. You learn to cook, Inferno style. Anu guides your hand, showing you the best ways to fold blood into recipes from a previous life. You make freshly steamed buns with raw innards, marinated skewers of flame-kissed vegetables, and barely grilled meats. You add jellied blood to noodles, soups, stir-fries. You attempt these techniques at home, cooking a variety of dinners, breakfasts, for Strike Team Nova. And you start to get pretty good at it. Just like Xainan, you too are bound in the invisible web of Inferno. Your attachments to its cuisine, its peoples, its fellow hunters and prey, it's all so intoxicating. You are not the center of the web, Seir, but you too are caught in its unseen grasp. We follow a third thread now, gliding past rooftops with curled eaves and shaded parks lined with ancient trees. We push through smoke-filled temples, shrined, lined with offerings, lips murmuring promises of devotion until we find Lumièra. Lumièra. As days turn to weeks, you work. You go to school. You ascend rapidly to the top of your class, outpacing most of your fellow grad students with effortless aplomb. You spend most of your nights doing homework, writing essays, working on projects, conducting research, throwing yourself into the ceaseless churn of academia that comes so easily to you. More than once, Xainan comes home from one of his many meandering walks to find you in the same place he left you, typing swiftly at your laptop, heedless of the breaking dawn beyond your blackout curtains. You taste Seir's culinary experiments, which are, to his credit, quite delicious. Sometimes he dozes on the couch while you work on your latest assignment, and Yinghe lounges on the carpet, entranced by the flat-screen TV, flipping through channels on mute so as not to disturb you. You begin studying in other places, too. The vast, dusty libraries of Inferno University, the common rooms of student dormitories, even a high-class, members-only cocktail lounge called Metaphor, a favorite haunt of Professor Ifueko's elite inner circle. Speaking of which, there is an elite inner circle, and you are a part of it now. It's a small group of 5 other graduate students that the professor has taken a shine to. They are the cream of the cream of the crop, and now they are your rivals, your peers, perhaps even your friends. They are the ones you can look to for honest and helpful feedback, the ones who can hold their own in rigorous and exciting intellectual debates, the ones who introduce you to the most exclusive social clubs in town. But as the weeks go on, you notice Professor Ifueko always seats you directly at her side, every time. Just like Xainan and Seir, you too are caught in this invisible web. You are bound by the richness of Inferno's history, the many untapped veins of knowledge you have yet to drink from, the promise of distraction, of purpose. You are not the center of this web, Lumièra, but you too have become a part of it. All that said, you do still have to go to work every night, which brings us to tonight. Lumièra. We find you in Elegy Apartments, getting ready to head over to Raven's Used Books. Yinghe is lying belly down on the carpet, flipping through the channels as usual, their hair in treacherous midnight pools around their body. Xainan and Seir, where are the two of you on this sleepy Wednesday evening?
Go ahead.
Xainan is standing by the coat closet, having already put on most of his layers, and is actively taking a brush to his hat just to clean all the lint off of it. Before he's even put on his shoes, and he's got his brush out, and he's just brushing it, standing in the doorway.
All we hear from the kitchen is the slamming of a blade against a wooden chopping board. Seir is preparing a meal, and once he is done chopping up what would be the garnish to this dish, we see him hurriedly place this food onto wax paper and into a boxed lunch that he seals shut, places it into a cloth bag, and is about to turn around to find Lumièra.
I think Lumièra is in the middle of... She's doing like that thing where you're like kind of running late, but like not really. So you have like one boot on and it's half zipped while you're also like trying to finish unbraiding a part of your hair. So she's like shuffling through the apartment, probably is stumbling over a few things as she's trying to finish up getting ready. I don't think that this is a new thing. So I think Lumièra walks right out of her and Yinghe's shared bedroom and walks right over to where the same spot that you place it every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she like grabs it and like in a rush, like reaches in, like presses a quick kiss to your cheek, like thank you, and is on her way out to the door.
Like clockwork, the moment that Lumièra steps out of their room, Xainan has one foot in a boot. She gets to the counter to grab her bag. His other foot is in a boot. And just as she walks up to the door, he lifts the hat to his head. Mind if I walk with you?
I will never turn down the company of a graceful old man. And Lumièra like nudges with her shoulder.
Yeah. And he smiles. There's something about all of the walking that he's been doing. Seems to make him younger every night as he steps out into the moonlight. And he holds the door open after you.
I'll see you guys later. And
Take
Lumièra
care.
crouches under Xainan's arm and out the door.
Oh, wait, Lumièra? I'm done with my secret rendezvous with a sexy vampire. Can you get me the sequel in that series?
I just got you. And Lumièra stops herself because does it even matter that she got it for them a day ago? No. Yinghe's reading. That makes her happy. So she just grins and nods. I'll see if I can get 2 and 3.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I really have to know who they end up with. Maybe all of them, if they're lucky. Have a good shift.
Lumièra winks and turns back out the door.
The door slots closed neatly behind the two of you, and Xainan and Lumièra, the two of you set off. As you exit Elegy Apartments and step into the bustling nighttime activity of Inferno, it is barely any darker than it is in midday. All of the street lamps are on, neon signs are going, car horns are blaring, mopeds are racing past crosswalks as the two of you ambulate toward Raven's used books. We find the two of you stalling on one end of a sidewalk, waiting for the crosswalk sign to turn white. So all of you and the rest of a group of pedestrians are safe to go.
Keep up.
Xainan... As she says that, his eyes are turned up to the towering buildings in the moonlight. It seems like every time he goes for one of these walks, which is almost every night at this point, he's looking up He's looking at the night sky, at the buildings, at the industrial plumes of all kinds of steam from kitchens and from maybe the sewer. He's just looking. He is absorbing. And he catches himself and begins to walk next to Lumièra closely. Just kind of nudges her.
You expecting some type of meteor shower?
No, just the stars here are beautiful.
And I think Lumièra takes a minute at that to glance up too. Because I don't think she's really actually gotten a chance to sit down and take them in.
You can see just a few pinpricks of light in that dark night sky. What's not obscured by the incredible light pollution coming out from downtown Inferno is quite beautiful to behold.
And he guards her side, just making sure that anyone who might be walking faster than them doesn't bump into her as they meander. And he looks at her face as she looks up at the stars, looking for any crack, any sign, any pain.
Speak your mind.
How are you doing?
I'm good. And she says that how she normally would say it. Tips off at the end, though. Just a little bit.
Just make sure you take it easy.
I have 2 3,000-word papers that are due on Friday. I have a lab report that's due tomorrow, and I have a research project that I have to turn in the outline for to... And she stops and like squinches her face as she's trying to think. Next Wednesday. So, somebody's got to do all that. Plus, on top of that, Professor Afuego,
than I've ever done in my entire life.
That does not surprise me. No offense.
None taken. It's an impressive amount of work. I just want to make sure that you are looking after. And he holds back very visibly what he is actually talking about. This silhouette of pain of what Lumièra told them all. All the important stuff. And he nudges her playfully.
Lumièra takes that nudge a little bit. But she knows you. She reads in between the lines of what you're asking her. I know you've been worried. I see it in your face every time you look at me. But I didn't tell you all for pity or empathy. I told you because it was important for you to know.
I just see how much you miss it. I'm here.
She smiles a little blissfully at that. I take pride in what I do.
And what you do is write books and books and books worth of psychology? Is that what it is?
Psychology, anatomy, physiology, biology. There's so many different moving parts to a med school track.
Impressive. Well,
Not even in the slightest.
don't let me hold you up. And Xainan looks ahead on the road and then back to her. Anytime you need help with not writing, you just let me know.
I will keep that in mind. I appreciate this, by the way. Genuinely.
Maybe tomorrow.
Yeah. Enjoy your walk.
Have a good shift.
Always. And Lumièra turns sharply and walks into the bookstore. And she watches as Xainan walks past the window.
Yeah, Xainan, as Lumièra disappears kind of into the ramp leading down into this like basement level bookstore, what emotion do we see, if not Lumièra, lingering on you before you turn and walk away?
Xainan holds his look after Lumièra so delicately. Not because she is delicate, but because he does not want to push her. But he wants to make sure, so he is watching. Watching for any moment where she might actually see what he now understands. That what fate did to her was not who she really is.
And Xainan, you fold into the crowd of inferno that swallows you. Lumièra, before you surface fully into the bookstore itself, you have a few beats of privacy as the door swings open, this liminal space between the outside and the inside. What do we see on your face, your demeanor, before you have to put on that shift mask?
Lumièra's face kind of drops a bit as if it's deeply in thought. She worries her bottom lip between her teeth, rolls her tongue across her top lip before kind of stretching and rolling her body back into her regular stature, flipping the mask on yet again.
You are greeted by the smell of old books and freshly brewed coffee. Soft lights wink down at you from a low ceiling. You see familiar messy shelves and a big bargain bin filled with dog-eared books, $1 each, a yuan each, rather. Micah, your coworker, is behind the counter, wrapping up for the night. Looks rather tired, stifles a yawn. As always, you can smell and hear Micah's blood beating at that pulse point right underneath their throat. They have a very sweet and rather innocent demeanor for a coworker. They have no idea that you're a vampire, that much is sure. And they have 2 cups of coffee in their hand, 2 paper cups, and as you come in, they offer one of them to you. Black as you like it.
Thank you. Lumièra will grab it and like kind of place it off over to the side, typically where she normally puts it, on the side of the cash register, right by where she would clock in at.
Well, listen, Lumièra, it's shaping up to be a pretty easy shift, so, you know, if you want to just scroll on your phone or something, that's probably fine. I promise you, I'm not going to tell on you. But yeah, I'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Micah. You have a great rest of your night. Get home safe.
Thank you, I will. I have leftover tikka masala waiting for me. And Micah bustles out. There's a ding 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 of the bell, and its slot's closed. And you are now officially the only person in this bookstore.
Lumièra knocks the coffee into the trash can.
Yeah, my question
She
to
has a
you,
mission.
Lumièra.
Today.
That's really fair. How long do you wait before you do something that is very much not on your task list as a employee here at the bookstore?
Lumièra gives it 45 minutes to an hour 15 tops. She sits, it takes everything in her, but she sits right behind the cash register and is just like thrumming her nails across the countertop and glancing at her phone, then glancing at a watch, then glancing at the clock on the register. And it's like time slows and drags. And it's like almost like that echoing clock. You hear it ticking and ticking as she waits before she finally gets frustrated enough to do the first thing that's on her mind.
And what might that be?
She pulls out her phone and calls Artemis.
After a short and rather grating, annoying series of beep, 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 from the Oracle, your phone lights up and Artemis's face appears on the screen.
Artemis appears in pixels and digital imagery, as they are wont to do here in Inferno. A strange kind of talking that you've gotten more used to as the weeks go on. And as they are wont to do, Artemis's eyes flick up to meet yours, as though they could see the three-dimensionality of you even through the phone screen, through their oracle. Lumièra, I wasn't expecting a call from you. Mission update?
Lumièra looks at Artemis almost like she's full of tension that she's trying to pipeline and narrow out to get out to you in more of a streamlined sense. Mission, yeah, so we're doing what you asked, making our way through the city, learning on our own. This mission debrief, Artemis, is so different than Lumièra's typical debrief. Her debriefs are detailed, time-stamped, all the way through. This is not that.
Artemis lets you talk for as long as you need around whatever it is that you're actually calling to say. But I think when the words start to trickle out, when the run-on sentences start to go nowhere, Artemis looks at you. It seems like she had been writing down notes, as requested, and then she really looks at you. Lumièra, all of this information was passed along from your oracle in your most recent team update. Is there something you'd like to talk about?
Deer in headlights.
She sees it and offers you a small mercy. Why don't we take a walk? I've been feeling rather cramped at my office. And you can see the background of her office shift and change. She stands up. And you can see again in the background she starts to move. It seems her oracle is just kind of floating in front of their face, following them, as a little oracle is wont to do. And as she starts to move, she starts to talk. And you can see behind her the syndicate flitting about. And it's not entirely uncommon. You can't really remember how many times you've seen Artemis walking through the halls of Trans with her oracle. And in that consistency, in that normalcy, there's a sense of privacy. One that mirrors the beautifully private, beautifully public walk that you just took with Xainan to get to the bookstore. You can see the lights shifting behind her. It is interesting, Lumièra, that you insist on pretending. That you insist on pretending that you have something else to say. That you think that I can't see through it.
Permission
Granted.
to speak.
You don't have to ask.
So, remember when, I did the thing? And she emphasizes thing very deeply, so you know exactly what she's referencing. And we went to the grove, and then we were talking about it, kind of, not really, but just like a little bit. And then like you said that the thing wasn't always wrong. It wasn't always forbidden. What did you mean by that?
There's no surprise in her face. There isn't very often at all. But there is something intense, something cracked open. And you get the feeling that she's not just taking this walk for you, she's taking it for herself too. But her eyes are focused on you, despite the movement in the background, despite the slight shift of her weight back and forth, the stride that you know so familiarly and so well. She sighs. Here in the Syndicate, we teach you about how fate and magic made the journey. Did we not?
Yes, sir.
How the precepts descended from their preceptual space, pulled on the threads of the domains and made them into worlds, into space, into lives, luck, fire, deaths. Yes?
And she nods.
But what we don't often teach you is that when fate and magic were first building their journey, they realized they were missing something. They didn't have everything that they needed. There was a key element, a key domain that did not exist in preceptual space, but one that needed to exist here to make the journey go. They needed time, Lumièra. So, they built her themselves, together, as parents might build a child, or as close as the precepts could manage to such a thing. They crafted time, the only domain born inside the journey. And you see, in those early days, time was infinite, and she had many devotees. These were the early chronologists, and they were a part of fate's will. The gift was always rare. But there were some who walked this hall with it when I was first introduced to the Syndicate.
What?
She sighs.
And Lumièra steps back, like pinching the bridge of her nose between her fingertips, running her fingers through her hair. You see those gears turning in her head, but it's almost like you see it turn and then click, and it kind of resets itself and keeps it. She can't get past it. That gear is stuck. So she just looks at you, dumbfounded and wide-eyed.
The next things that Artemis says, in a way, you can feel her lean in and blow the sand away. Her eyes get heavier. One of the many sicknesses of immortality, Lumièra, is that when we see the end, it has a tendency to undo us. Oblivion follows fate and magic wherever they go. You know this well. This does every agent of trans. It is the end of all things. And when oblivion, finally met time. When the chronologist tried to turn oblivion itself backward to undo its very nature. Oblivion and time touched. Time became finite. The journey itself attained an end. And that scared her. That frightened fate more than anything had ever frightened her before. And you must understand this, Lumièra. When gods are frightened, mortals suffer. And the words leave an echo of the city of heaven, of Yanhuan, the missives from Striped Team Phoenix of the destruction in the god sphere, through the wild sea, through Inferno. But that's not what this is really about, is it?
She's scared of me?
She's scared of the end of her journey and the finite clock that ticks down toward it. But you, beautiful, brave girl, you still heed your calling. Time still calls you, vibrant and viciously finite. Oh, Lumièra. Fate did not choose that. Magic did. Time did. She called you.
But magic never says anything. They're always right at the right-hand side of fate. That magic never does anything that fate doesn't want them to.
Have you ever wondered why I'm always doing paperwork?
I figured in order to keep you busy and trans and not out in the journey getting torn to shreds.
I see I left an impression on you the last time we were in the Grove.
One doesn't really forget hearing something like that.
The Syndicate was made to help keep the journey aligned with fate's will. To keep us far from that inevitable end following the end of time. And we do. But the paperwork is not simply there to keep me busy. The work itself never ends. The journey always, inevitably strays. It always has.
So there's always going to be stray threads in the tapestry, no matter how hard she tries?
There always have been. That's what we do.
You're considered a stray?
Yes. Yes, I am. So
Am
is a
I?
ghost. So is the twin of a chosen one. So is a shadow. So is an 8-year-old girl who appears impossibly on our doorstep with nary a whim of where she came from. Is it dangerous? Maybe. The journey continues anyway. time keeps going, even though she's afraid. Something settles in her. You have no idea where she's walked to. Whatever shapes are swimming in space behind Artemis at this point, they're rather unfamiliar. Empty hallways. Long, empty hallways built and rebuilt by the Syndicate's whims. She speaks into one of those empty hallways, letting the words echo around in space, and you can hear them echoing out through your cell phone in Inferno in a tiny bookstore in a basement. You remind me of her, in some ways. But not in others. You don't want to let go of your song, do you?
Lumièra swallows at that. She's been grappling a lot with that type of question.
Don't try to lie to me, beautiful girl.
I want to do right, Artemis. But if my inherent nature is threat maximum, how do I do that?
That's not the question I asked you. Do you want to let go of your song?
Oh. If I was chosen for this, then I will wear it, pain and all.
Good. I don't want you to lose it either. The heresy comes easy to her, clean on her tongue like a blade, like an arrow shoved through her sternum, into the empty public space of the Syndicate in which she speaks to you. You have always been a stray thread, my brave girl, and I have always wanted you. I have always wanted you to follow that song, because when mortals suffer, I feel it. Like sunlight under my skin, the bones that once housed. A god, I feel all of it. But I feel it too when you remember. I want you to remember all of it, Lumièra.
I had a dream. Or a memory, something. I was home with my mom. And Sing was there. I want to remember. All of it.
Good. I want you to remember it. There's something that you should see. You left something behind when you went to Inferno. I've taken the liberty of making sure it gets to you. Should be in the third stack near the back. New arrivals. You'll recognize it, I think.
Lumièra like sets her phone down on like a shelf and goes and runs over to the new arrivals shelf. And
you get in the very back of the bookstore. Sorry, go ahead, C.
Go ahead, Connie.
Yeah. Lumièra, you arrive in the very back of the bookstore. That third shelf. You rake your eyes over all of the new arrivals, the spines, the tomes, and then it leaps out to you. How could it not? It was your constant companion for the past few missions, and its contents have always been so lucrative to you, and yet so out of reach. It's that chronology book that Elsbeth Sanoon has been bartering to you for. And based on the spine of it, it says, the research log of, and your heart skips a beat, because the name has been unredacted.
As you run down the hallway, you can hear Artemis's voice from the speaker of your phone chasing you. And when you come back, she's not there anymore. But the last thing that you hear before Artemis disappears in that constellation of pixels back into the empty night sky, I could not save Sing. And I could not save myself. But I will try to save you, my brave girl.
Vroom.
And then she's gone.
Mira looks at it, and it calls to her in a way that unnerves her. And she reaches out to grab it before pulling her hand back, and she does that a few times before ultimately grabbing it, stuffing it deep, deep into her cloak. She may not read it, but she also can't risk this getting into anyone else's hands. To safekeeping.
And the tome sits heavy against your body. Time passes. More days turn into more weeks. We see Xainan playing cards with Sakti in the Lazy Bear pub and grill, learning each other's tells. We see Seir sketching in borrowed charcoal on the now repaired apartment rooftop overlooking the city. We see Lumièra knocking back shots of blood with the rest of Nova at the Lazy Bear, holding her own against an increasingly boisterous Anugata. And we see Yinghe, cross-legged on the bed, reading a dense psychology textbook with open fascination as Lumièra braids his hair. As the weeks begin to blur into each other, we pause on a captured moment of time to find Seir. Seir, you are in the kitchen, and you are cooking up a storm. You're trying a brand new recipe, a blend of techniques from Anugata and your own culinary inspirations. And you're not alone. Strike Team Nova swarms around the apartment, preparing for another night in Inferno, but nobody is leaving before you're done cooking. That's where we find the four of you now in the kitchen, surrounded by the hustle and bustle of steam, cutting boards, knives, kitchen timers, and prog rock playing from the television, courtesy of Yinghe. Seir, what are you making?
Seir is making a more raw side pork belly stir fry. It's Sing's favorite. And he's been thinking about her lately. And I need everyone to know that Seir uses only one knife in the kitchen. It's a cleaver. He refuses to use
No.
anything else.
Wait, is it like
Xainan
a big
watches-
style cleaver?
Yes, he There is no
I hate it
fine
here.
chopping of the garlic or fine chopping of the ginger. It is smack tossed in. Everything is done so quickly.
I think today Xainan has decided to keep his protest of this behavior to himself, but every time there's a chop, he like jumps or winces because he just wants to. He's just like, there are so many other knives. Kitchens have so many tools. Why is this occurring? But he keeps it to himself.
Cooking
Lumièra,
up a storm indeed is what Seir is doing.
Lumièra, how are you faring with this culinary adventure?
Faring? Lumièra doesn't cook. So she's sitting at, she is good at many things. Canonically, terrible cook. So she's sitting at the kitchen table, and I think she's like doing one of those lean backs where like the front two legs are off, and she just balancing on the back two legs of the chair with like her feet kind of like propped up on the edge of the table, and she's just delegating. Go grab it. Where the pot in the pantry right up above where the cereal is. Olive oil is under the sink. Just like,
Yep, got it. I think our mise en place is en place. Yes, Seir?
Seir does not know what that means. Seir just cooks, and that's the entire time he's moving about this kitchen. Seir cooks like he does everything else. It's on instinct. And the instinct that fueled his cooking before was, and how he learned, was wanting to feed Sing in the wee hours of the night without alerting the entirety of Trance. They did inevitably announce themselves to the entirety of Trance because you're 8-year-olds. You can't just make a grilled cheese without anyone knowing. And as Seir begins putting out all of these side dishes, he's been feeling that phantom feeling of piercing white hot pain behind the tattoo of his sister's birthmark on his chest. The feeling of being pulled into the undertow of the Red River. And I think he lingers there for a little longer. I think even to the point where Yinghe might notice that one of the pork belly is starting to get more cooked than it is raw.
I think it's Xainan that notices. He's standing there like, now you turn it. And he's just watching and waiting for it to happen, and it just doesn't happen. He's like, oh.
Sorry, yeah. And you see Seir brings out this flat, I forgot what you call it, but the flat stirring spoon, and just begins to toss it on. And I think at one point he gets too annoyed by the fact that he's so distracted that he puts the little ladle away, grabs the wok on either handle, and then just by hand tosses to get the final touches of the cooking done before pulling the wok away and turning down the heat.
When the wok gets picked up, before he can even start tossing it, because this has happened enough times now that Xainan just steps back next to Lumièra and leans against the table, crosses his arms, just I'm not getting too close to that again.
No, absolutely.
I'll go get it. Lumièra goes and gets the burn kit.
There's no need for the burn kit. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. And Seir moves towards he once the heat is down, he covers the wok. He starts pulling out the plates. His eyes drift to Yinghe and to the heavy lump that sits in his throat, before he, in true Seir fashion, blurts out as he kind of tightens his hair into the bun that he tied it in. I have something to tell everyone.
Food's ready?
That too.
You burned it.
No, it's fine.
What is it, Seir?
His heart pounds in his chest, and he's afraid. He's afraid to look afraid. He's afraid to look weak. But he has to take the plunge, right? Because his strike team cares about him. I had an omen. Well, more like the head priest had an omen and shared it with me. about my fate here in Inferno. There is a very immense danger is headed my way. I felt the
Hey. And Xainan steps forward and puts a hand on Seir's shoulder and just kind of lightly pets it.
I felt the feeling that I felt when Singh died. I don't think I told you this. When Singh died, I felt the lance in my own chest. I felt that again. And I was drowning in the Red River. And I couldn't get out. And I could feel it. I felt like how I felt every other instance of doom. I felt it. I'm in danger.
That hand just begins to gently circle right along Seir's back. We'll figure it out.
It's silent for a minute. I think, if anything, you hear the trembling. Lumièra has the burn kit in her hands, and she's stuck in the middle of the hallway, wide-eyed. And she walks over to the table, puts the burn kit down, and walks directly into your personal space, staring you so intently in your eyes. She reaches up and cups both sides of your cheeks. You made me a promise. You said you would always have time for me. So, and she rolls her tongue across her teeth again, looking up away from your eyes for a second before focusing intently back on yours again. So this time it's my turn to make you a promise.
Lumièra,
We always have time for each other. Always. Okay? Promise me. Promise me.
I promise. Of course.
Settled.
I'm sorry.
I'm just glad you told me. Now we can
Well,
make a plan.
While watching this, just standing there between the two of them, not too involved, just watching and listening. That door that shattered apart when Lumièra confessed. The frame itself is no longer even a door frame. Every walk, a piece of it has crumbled away, but the actual shape of it is now a wide hole that Xainan stands in the middle of. Seir's confession. Another reason to step through and keep walking forward. Fate would not wish this for someone that she could care for.
Yinghe does not look surprised. They've known this for weeks, and they have been patient, as you have asked them to be, and now they look proud. Standing next to you, one hand on one of the handles of the walk to make sure that it doesn't get burned by this low fire. A small smile comes across the Shadow Mage's mouth, and she leans in and whispers up to you, Seir. I'm proud of you. See? That wasn't so bad, right? I told you we'd all be here for you.
And I don't think Seir at this point understood what his previous self thought. I think there's this moment of, how could I have ever thought that I wouldn't matter, that this news wouldn't matter? Of course it does. And I think like Seir is like still in the same spot of where Lumièra held either of his cheeks. He's like leaning down, head further forward, and he hears Yinghe whisper out to his ears, and all of you hear it. The little tiny choking of a sob that happens deep within your chest, the back of your throat. That burning feeling of relief. That even he felt so lonely all this time. But all the love is right here in this room, right next to him. And nothing can take the hole that she left, but everyone is here. And we trust in each other. And I think you hear it one more time in choked sobs. Sorry. I'm sorry.
You don't have to apologize, Seir. You don't. And hey, you can cheer up, because now we get to go on that fun date, remember?
Okay. The food's getting cold.
Smells delicious.
Yes, come here. And Lumièra walks over to you and just wraps her arms around your neck in a big, tight bear hug. Very reminiscent of the hug she would give you when we were younger. She's up on her tiptoes.
And Seir reciprocates, and I think we hold each other for a long moment before Seir reaches over to a like piping hot dumpling with more like raw meat on the inside and holds it in front of your face to feed you.
Man after my heart, absolutely.
Lumièra, you bite down. It's delicious. There is one final thread within the web of Inferno we haven't yet followed. This thread leads us through neon streets and soaring spires, past crowds of cyclists and packs of mopeds idling at red lights, through the crowded walkways of the market district crammed with colorful stalls and the flavorful smell of grilled meats. We push through urban gardens, gleaming skyscrapers, busy bars, and jam-packed nightclubs to find the Thakrar Haveli. We follow this thread. Excuse me. We follow this thread. C's face is really funny in the backstage.
You good, God?
I'm good. Sometimes you just gotta like make like a pig and snort, you know?
God.
Anyway, got me thinking about Hong Sha Ro, pork belly. We follow this thread through a quiet courtyard. Okay. We follow this thread through a quiet courtyard blooming with fragrant jasmines. The purple faces of water hyacinths bob atop carefully curated ponds as this thread winnows into the shaded walkways of the Haveli, through another courtyard, and into the home office of one Rhododendron Thakrar. Rhododendron. As days turn to weeks, you work. And you work. And you work. The bloodbath must be perfect. It is your job to ensure that it is. And so you do what you must. You rub elbows, you pull strings, you kiss boots, metaphorically, of course. Willow would never suffer anything otherwise. You curry favor with houses Kuatun and Huyen. You meet with Sakti at the Lazy Bear once, and then twice, and then a few more times until the leader of Kuatun is confident in your promises, not necessarily of a better inferno, but of the fact that you won't screw them over. That, and Kuatun's growing relationship with members of a certain House Nova, secures the bearer's attendance at the bloodbath, and a tentative agreement to support your house's cause. As for the foxes, their loyalty is all but assured. The marriage between Anis and Yara pleases the professor greatly so, and this agreeability only increases after the special guided tour of the ICMA you take her and her daughter on, pointing out the museum's various pieces and treating them to the secret histories of Inferno even the professor doesn't know the full extent of. And so Toyin agrees to pledge her fealty when the time comes. And that's all you need for now. As for the serpents are difficult to persuade. Tingsing doesn't budge. You are sent away from the temple after your second attempt. Politely rebuffed, but still rebuffed. House Ula is less than disinterested in what the spiders have to offer. They are actively aligned against it. And it is no small secret that the abbot and your Shrike are associates. Friends? Companions? You don't know, you're not sure, but some distant and frightening emotion does stir within you when your thoughts linger on that topic a little too long. You're getting distracted. The serpents, you don't need them. You have Kuatun, and you have Huyen. Lanius is out of the question, of course, but they were never part of the equation in the first place. With the alliances of the bears and the foxes in hand, you have what Thakrar needs, a majority share of the future of Inferno. Now all you have to do is execute. We find you now, in the depths of your office, poring over paperwork and event plans scattered across your heirloom desk. Your rapier is mounted on the wall behind you, hanging over your head like an ill omen. You, too, are not the center of this invisible web that binds all Inferno. You, too, are trapped within it. You always have been, Ro. And you always will be. That's what's meant to be. Rhododendron, what does it look like as you mull over the floor plans of the burgeoning bloodbath?
The lights are dim in the office. There is a very low light, shadows spilling out over the artwork on the walls, over that rapier hanging just above Ro's head, and over Ro themselves. They sit at their desk, one hand holding Rare head, and Rare hair is spilling out onto the papers in front of them. There is stacks of different contracts and blueprints and books on artwork and event planning kind of like scattered all over this desk like walls surrounding Ro in the center of it. And they are poring over the floor plan of the ICMA, specifically of the Recluse Gallery where the bloodbath is meant to be had, chewing on a pencil in their mouth as Ray goes over it, trying to figure out, there's like little figurines that Ro has placed on the floor plan to indicate where all of the different art pieces will be kept in the Recluse Gallery. And I think they've been chewing specifically on the idea of where to put House Kuatun's piece compared to Professor Fueco's and I think they're moving it around. They like move one little figurine to a corner and kind of look at it. Ray moves back, getting a bigger bird's eye view of it. Shakes for her head and then moves it back to where it was, and kind of like is just shuffling things around at this point. And it doesn't really seem like Ray is accomplishing anything other than stressing themselves out, quite frankly.
Rhododendron, your door opens. There's no knock, no announcement of an arrival. Why should there be? This is her house. Your mother walks in, and her yellow eyes are cold and gleaming in the dark like a cat's. Without preamble, she approaches your desk and casts a critical gaze over all these scattered, messy event plans. She picks up a list. Kuatun is catering. Good. Are these the hors d'oeuvres?
Ro's head snaps up as Ray hears their mother walk into the office. I don't think they noticed until Willow had spoken, having been so absorbed in the work that they were doing. And so I think Willow catches sort of this like disheveled kind of look. Ro hasn't really brushed their hair in a little bit, and everything is kind of scattered. And caught in that moment, I think Ray stands up really quickly and knocks over like a miniature or two accidentally and says, "That's the tentative menu for the hors d'oeuvres at the moment. I was thinking that it might be good
less
to ask."
bread, more seafood. Get some oysters on their red point, not Kumamoto. She puts the list back down.
I thought I would ask House Kuatun to help with the hors d'oeuvres, seeing as it might be a good gesture and all.
Of course, that is only to be expected. They do own the restaurant districts in Inferno. Anything else than catering the event would be a slap to their face.
Right. Yeah. More oysters, and I think they take that pencil that they had been chewing. I think Willow can see the end of it that has like bite marks where their fangs had burrowed into the wood, and they scribble like a note really quickly onto the menu, like striking out some of the bread pieces and writing in like more oysters.
No one else has seen you like this, yes?
No. And instinctively, Rose's hand goes to their hair and tries to like smooth it out and taking some of the flyaways. I've been locked up in my office, busy for quite some time. Everything is coming along smoothly.
That's actually why I'm here. And your mother kind of leans against the back of a chair, doesn't sit in the chair, but just kind of rests her weight against it, crosses her arms loosely underneath her extremely fashionable and elegant blouse. I've been impressed with your preparations, Rhododendron. You've been doing well.
Surprise flashes across Ro's face for just a moment before they school it back. Ray was prepared to hear critique, additional things that needed to be fixed, things that were going wrong in Willow's eyes, decisions that they disagreed with. Ro was not prepared to hear praise. And so there's a moment, a beat, where Ro doesn't quite believe what they've heard. And their body doesn't release the tension that's been sitting there. If anything, it tightens, further recoils into itself further, hearing this. Thank you, Mother. I've been working quite hard at it, especially with the shortened timeline.
Well, pressure creates diamonds. And our family is, of course, in the practice of excavating beauty. I know these past few weeks have been hard for you, and that my expectations for you are high. But I would not push you if I didn't know you would be able to succeed.
No, it hasn't been hard. They lie. It's just been a challenge. That's all. But one that like you said, one that I can rise to, one that I have risen to.
your hair is a mess. Do you still keep the comb I gave you for your 16th birthday here? And she pushes off the back of the chair and starts, like, just going through your shelves.
Yes, it's, and I don't think that Ro even bothers trying to finish that sentence because I don't think anything that they would say would stop Willow from doing this, so they just kind of let it happen.
In one of the shelves, she finds what she's looking for and takes out a beautiful jade comb, carved from the stone itself. And without asking or anything else, she comes up to you and starts, like, running the comb through your hair. Gently, so as not to tug on the roots, but to kind of, like, make it a bit smoother, make it a bit less messy, working out the tangles. And the last time your mother did this was... you could hardly remember, you must have been a child.
And just like a child, Ro settles a little bit backwards into Willow. Not all the way, not so much as to lean on Rare Mother, they would not do that, but just enough to close some of that distance between them. Just a bit.
You're close, Rhododendron. Very close to the finish line. I believe you have what it takes to make this final lap. Do you?
And Ro looks out at their office. I think they had, in the process of Willow kind of turning to find that comb, they had kind of turned themselves around so that they are looking at that sword hanging above their head and looking at its beautiful nasturtium flowers on the gilded cage on the basket of that rapier. Ro nods. I'm ready.
Willow finishes combing your hair, puts the comb away, and steps back to look at you fully. We are giving Inferno a new beginning. But all beginnings must come at the expense of the end of some things. Lanius is a fixture of the past. We must leave it behind. You must leave it behind for good.
And that tightness in Ro's body forms a hot coal in the middle of their chest. This too was expected. Ro knew exactly what it was that they are supposed to do, what they're meant to do. And Ro nods, again, turning to face their mother fully. And I suppose that it is up to me to end House Lanius once and for all.
Of course it is. I assume that among these scattered documents are preparations for the duel.
I've been thinking about that. A opening at an art gallery merits a performance. A show for the guests. And I thought that perhaps what better way to usher in a new age than to show everyone the end of the current one.
Yes. Silence the shrikes once and for all. And you feel confident you'll be able to go through it. The killing of Tivash Lanius, I mean.
Yeah, yes.
Your sword will not waver.
Not again.
Good. You must win this duel, Rhododendron. There is no other way.
I've never lost a duel. And I don't intend to lose this one.
This is true. And I think, perhaps... And then her eyes flick up to that rapier that you have been fixated on this entire time. She joins you in looking at it. It hangs over you both. It always has. I think perhaps it's time. And she approaches the rapier and unmounts it.
Are you sure?
Yes, I am, Rhododendron. I've not ever been more sure of your position here in our house than I am in this moment. Come. She presents you with the rapier, jerks her head, and leads you out.
The rapier sits in Ro's hands, lengthwise, one hand wrapped around the blade, one hand on that basket. And I think the surprise in Ro's face is plain to see. It's impossible at this point for Rum to hide it. And their fingers run over those nasturtium flowers, and they feel themselves stuck in this office for a beat, a second. Perhaps one too long before they find it within themselves to move and to follow Willow out of the office. And the whole time they rush up and try to catch up to Willow, and when they do, rapier still in hand, they say, "Don't you think that maybe we could wait before we did this?"
How much longer must you wait and dawdle on the threshold of what you must become, Rhododendron? There is no more point in waiting. The web is woven. You must simply accept your place in it.
And I think there is something unspoken there in those words, something that Ro doesn't dare to vocalize themselves. That in order for Ro to take their place within House Thakrar, they must replace that which is gone.
Rhododendron, your mother leads you to a special courtyard connected to the main Haveli. It is a courtyard that you don't frequent, not because you're not allowed to, but because you choose not to. After all, it's the place where every spider that has ever lived and died and lived again is interred. You follow your mother through a shaded walkway that overlooks the cemetery. Early morning light is now starting to filter through the dense leafy fronds of mango trees, but the carved awning above your heads ensures no harm can befall either of you. The headstones here are simple but elegant, each marked with a name and little else. The graves themselves are all arranged to face in the same direction, that of the Red River. You pass tombstones etched with names you recognize: Chrysanthemum, Jamun, Nasturtium. Your mother leads you to the Thakrar Mausoleum. It is an ancient monument to the inexorable nature of death, and the final resting place of Dianthus Thakrar himself. A domed roof rests atop 4 walls of finely dressed stone. Each wall contains an archway with a wide ramp, making the mausoleum accessible from all 4 directions of the courtyard. Your mother leads you through the eastern entrance, your path shielded from the sun by a dense canopy of trees. Inside this mausoleum, you see an octagonal chamber with intricately carved walls all around you. Stone reliefs depict your family's history, from the founding of Inferno at the hands of Dianthus to the weaving of the crimson tapestry and the construction of the houses themselves. In the center of this chamber, your eyes fall upon a raised dais. And atop this dais are 3 objects. A large ceremonial brazier filled with unfired coals, an anvil, and an ancient stone basin rippling with water from the Red River. Your mother pauses at the bottom of this dais and turns to look at you. What emotions are bleeding onto your face?
Regret. Ro, in this mausoleum, in this temple to everyone that has come before them is reminded of everyone that has been trapped in this web before them, is reminded of how they died, of how they became and then unbecame, of who they thought that they could be, and were quickly reminded could not be, should not be. And it's just regret. It's regret from the center of the web all the way out to its edges, every thread woven with it. They don't want to be here. They never did. And they still don't.
Your mother sees that on your face, of course. She looks at you. She approaches you. And she places one cold hand on top of your hand that's holding the hilt of this rapier, attached to that intricately woven basket decorated with beautiful nasturtiums. Your mother says, looking into your eyes, closely and softly, "It's time, Rhododendron. It has been time. It's overdue. We need to let him go. You need to let him go. He is gone. He is not coming back, and you must replace him."
And Ro's hands tighten around that rapier, both of them, around the nasturtium flowers, which create indentations of the metal into their palm, around that blade where, though Ro's heart does not beat, there is still blood in their body, and that blood starts to trickle out of that clenched fist down onto the blade itself, onto the ground in this mausoleum. And they hold it tight, like a kid holding on to a security blanket that they do not want to part with. Being told by a parent that in order to grow up, you must. And I think it takes Willow perhaps saying it again before Ro's hands release, the blood still running down one of them, and they extend their arms out with the rapier towards Willow.
You must do this alone, as your brother did, as I did, and my mother before me, and her mother before her, all the way back to Dianthus Thakrar himself. She folds her hand over your fingers on the blade and gently pushes the sword back into your hands. She looks up to the top of the dais and nods for you to approach.
And Ro does.
As you approach the apex of the dais, your mother goes to one of the walls of the mausoleum and places a hand on an ancient stone lever built onto it, waiting for you to take your place. You know what needs to be done. The reforging of it all. And you have been told how to do it. It's been passed down through your family, though you've not done this before. It is the story of it that guides you. And there is a loud clanking noise as she pulls down this ancient stone handle, and the ceiling begins to shake. As it does, dust unseats from the dome, and a few pebbles fall and clatter onto the ground around you. And both you and Willow see a slit opening in the dome as though in an observatory. But instead of revealing the starry night sky above, we see morning light growing brighter and brighter with each passing second, filtering through that opening. And it goes through a huge, powerful glass that covers the slit and directs its position. The sunlight travels down in an ultra-heated, powerful beam, and it hits that brazier. and seconds later, smoke starts to rise from the unfired coals, and the gray color of it begins to turn into a dark cherry red as the brazier starts to light up. You know what we must do.
As the morning light lights up the coals in the brazier, all of the regret, all of this emotion, all of these imperfections in Ro fall away. They burn away with those coals. And Ro squares themselves up, moves their shoulders down and back proper. The shaking that was happening in their hands, they force it to still. And they school their expression back, hiding that regret within a layer of responsibility with what they must do and who they must become. And it is with this mask, with this performance, that they begin to melt the sword down.
The beautiful nasturtium petals melt against the burning sunlit coals. They blend and they disappear and they boil down into unmade metal. And what shape do you reforge it into as you bring it over to the anvil and pick up a hammer?
The general shape of the rapier remains the same. It must, as tradition dictates. It is still a long, beautiful rapier with the words of House Thakrar etched into its blade, the basket, a intricate web of spider silk kind of elongated around. But those nasturtium flowers get replaced with rhododendrons, large and beautiful, coming off of those spider webs at every little point where all of the connections are made. It is now their sword, as much as it can be.
The final step, of course, is to quench it in the blood of the river itself. And you dip the basket, the entire sword, into that basin, when huge plumes of steam erupt upward. And when you pull the rapier back out of that dripping water, you see it. It's you. Rhododendrons all over that basket. Any hint, any ghost, any whisper of Astor, gone. And your mother says, with a look of pride and a note of pride welling in her voice, "Good. The sword has been remade. Use it to kill Tivash Lanius. Use it to claim your rightful place as heir."
In that moment, holding this new sword, holding themselves in their hands, Ro feels like they just killed Astor for a second time. And in their blood was forged, became someone, anyone.
And we're gonna go to break there. So we'll be back in about 5 to 10 minutes. That was cute and lovely. See you soon. Spisho pisho. Howdy, transplanters. You know what time it is. It's sponsor Connie time with a word from Hero Forge. Hero Forge has officially leveled up with kit bashing. When you become a pro member, you can place up to 20 more items anywhere on one of your blorbos with their own independent scaling, rotation, and movement. You can make your character look exactly as they should, even if the specific clothing or accessory option isn't available at the base level. You just have to get a little creative. And because I love you, transplanters, here's a special sneak peek at a kit-bashed version of Oblivion. Just look at those wings and that base. This would not be possible without the power of kit bashing. The combinations are literally endless, and you can print your kit bashed Blorbos as plastic minis, standees, digital STL files, or even Hero Forge's brand new color statuettes. Color statuettes are twice the size of a regular mini, and just look at this. I mean, look at how massive this is, and especially in comparison to a regular mini, you can really get into all the nooks and crannies and details that wouldn't be as apparent on a regular sized mini. Just look at how Oblivion dwarfs Oka here. And also, if you're a GM, consider busting out one of these bad boys during a boss fight to really get your players shaking in their boots. Oblivion agrees. Unlock the true power of Hero Forge with a Hero Forge Pro subscription starting at $3.99 a month. Get in there and start creating at bit.ly/transforge. Now, let's get back to the show. Or more likely, just more of the waiting room. Trust in her will.